Hello everyone and welcome to another session of AP Human Geography with Mr. Elrod. Today we're going to continue on in Unit 6, Economics and Industrial Development. So in our last video, we were talking about Weber's theory of industrial least cost location. Blah, it's a mouthful, sorry about that. So anyway, in this video we're just going to finish that up, or finish up some thoughts on that, this particular theory and idea of where industries should locate themselves. So in the last video, we spent most of our time talking about transportation costs, because that's really the cost that he focuses on the most in terms of plotting out on the different charts and things. You'll see a variety. I mean, if you look around, you'll see a variety of different charts and graphs that he used in order to plot locations of industries. And you can do some of those exercises yourself. I think they're kind of helpful to understand the concept. But anyway, so today we're going to talk about agglomeration and deglomeration and how exactly that's going to impact the placement of not necessarily factories by themselves, but just talk about businesses in general. And you've seen all this happen. You've seen it in your everyday life, but you maybe just didn't know that the terms were agglomeration and deglomeration. So the first one we're talking about is agglomeration. And basically, agglomeration is simply when several industries that are within the same field come together in a similar location. And they do that to try and benefit from one another. There are a lot of benefits that go together if all of these industries, or not necessarily industries, but all these different businesses that are maybe not necessarily always they don't do the exact same thing, but they are similar, or they're in a similar industry, and so that they can then feed off of each other. One of the things they can do is they can share in the cost of development, whether we're talking about infrastructural development or other types of development within the area. If they come together and they start working together, especially if they can benefit from each other, they can share in the cost of that development, whether it's the different business parks or industrial parks or whatever it happens to be. They can also feed off of one another in terms of either the labor that they require, or they can feed off of each other in terms of the consumers that they're trying to attract. And you can see over here to the right, I have Silicon Valley, obviously one of the hubs for a lot of the tech industries. And some of the companies, some of the industries they revolve around the exact same thing, but some of them are just kind of offshoots or parts of the technology industry, whether we're talking about just software development, where they're talking about computers and the actual building of the computer itself, whether we're talking about online presence, or now of course with social media and things like that going on. And of course nearby you have a lot of the California colleges that are going to help make Silicon Valley a really attractive place for these businesses to go. And we'll talk more about that as we move forward, because that's one of the things that local governments and things are going to be working towards, to try and prevent prevent things like brain drain. There we go. Or to try to prevent what's called the backwash effect, and we'll look at that in just a second. So you have places like the high tech corridor in Silicon Valley. You have places like the Research Triangle out in North Carolina. And again, you have all these similar industries kind of coming together. In the Research Triangle, you have the various universities like Duke, North Carolina State, UNC, Chapel Hill, along with a lot of the research hospitals. And then, of course, with hospitals, you're going to have things like independent practices. You're going to have pharmacies. You're going to have medical supply stores and things like that, also kind of congregating in a similar area. A lot of times I also like to talk about the auto industry, whether you have automobile manufacturers, you're going to have dealerships, and where you have dealerships, you typically are going to have auto shops. You're going to have places that fix tires or fix glass, things along those lines. And so those are all good examples of agglomeration. So again, I have the example here of Silicon Valley, and so with that, that's going to cause the concentration, especially in the tech industry. A lot of times it ends up causing the concentration of skilled labor in a specific location. And just like with brain drain, there we go, brain drain, this can create an issue, because when you have high concentration of skilled labor in one particular area, that means there's a lack of skilled labor in other areas around the country, and so it can be difficult for these industries to get started in other places because of the need for skilled labor. And so this is what we call the backwash effect. And the backwash effect is when you have this high concentration of skilled labor in one location, and again, which creates a lack of skilled labor in other locations around. And that can happen because of agglomeration, because all these industries are coming to one place to feed off of each other, to feed off of maybe the former employees or the educational situation, or just a community that is centered towards those types of industries. So that's agglomeration, and deglomeration is exactly the opposite of that. So with agglomeration, we have a lot of building up going on, we have a lot of development going on, industries coming and concentrating in an area, and deglomeration occurs almost when you've hit this peak, this too high concentration of similar industries that are similar businesses that are near each other. And a lot of times this happens because you have too much competition in an area and not enough market share. And you've probably seen this happen before, especially with something like restaurants, especially restaurants that serve similar menus. Menus is the word I'm looking for there. Sorry, I had a slight brain lapse there. Anyway, so yeah, restaurants with similar menus, whether it's Mexican restaurants or Chinese restaurants or burger stands or whatever. When one comes in, you have a bunch of them come in, or pizza buffets, and so you have this high concentration of similar types of restaurants, or maybe just restaurants in general. And then some of them make it, and then some of them don't. And so with that, because there's too much competition, not enough market share, some of them end up going out of business, or if things, deglomeration can also be when things become too concentrated and becomes too congested, too much going on, that it ends up becoming an unattractive place to do business. People won't necessarily want to go there, and so they'd rather go other places, which ends up causing kind of the breaking apart or the breaking up of that particular area and the businesses around, and so kind of a decline in the economic landscape of that location. So those are the two ideas of agglomeration and deglomeration. And real quick, we're just going to go over some of the criticisms of Weber's least cost theory of industrial location. And the criticisms of Weber are pretty much the criticisms of any theory or any model. Basically, the idea that the world is dynamic. Models try to create static worlds, and that's just never going to happen, we know, in the real world. So that's always the criticism, is the world is dynamic. Markets are dynamic. Markets are not fixed. There are multiple markets, and so industries are going to have to think about shipping to multiple markets. Labor is also dynamic. You have different labor costs for different groups of people, different ages, those types of things. And and also with labor costs, we have to remember that labor cost is going to include a lot of other things other than just the cost of the paycheck that goes to the individual, and we'll talk more about that in our next video. And then of course there's also complications with transportation costs. Just like in von Thunen, you're never going to have a situation where transportation costs are going to be fixed. You're never going to have a situation where there's not something that's going to cause transportation to deviate, or there's not going to be a perfect landscape, perfectly flat landscape for the transportation to go over. And so with that, these are just some of the common criticisms of any model, and of course they apply to Weber's model as well. Plus, with this, especially with the way the world is progressing today, all the things that go into the decisions of where to place a factory or where to place a business. There's a lot of different elements that go in. It's going to be out. It's also going to go outside transportation, labor costs, especially when you talk about governments getting involved. Supplying things like subsidies or tax credits. I think Georgia is a great example of that, because within the last couple of years we've really been trying to bring industries to Georgia, things like the film industry. We've had several plants open up here recently. We had a Caterpillar plant open up in Athens. We had a Kia plant open up in Columbus, Georgia, and we had, I believe it was a medical supply plant open up in Social Circle, Georgia. And all these came to Georgia. A lot of it had to do with, and just most recently, Mercedes is moving their headquarters from New Jersey to Georgia. And a lot of it, of course, you have things like the right to work state, so not as many labor unions, lower taxes, but also the governor here, Nathan Deal, has been really working at this and offering tax credits, tax breaks and things like that for these companies to come down here. So again, the world is really much more complicated than Faber makes it out to be, and of course that's just to be expected. To make these models, it would be almost unfair to expect for you to be able to think of every single little outlier situation that might occur. Anyway, I've rambled on a little bit. I do apologize for that. So that's all we're going to go over today. That's going to kind of be the end of Faber's theory of least cost industrial location. And next time when we come back, we're going to talk about some kind of exceptions to the rule. We're going to talk about some labor costs, and we're also going to talk about what are called footloose industries. So I hope you found that to be helpful, and I hope to see you next time.